I am going to start with a line and phrase that we've all become too familiar with recently, and it's one that I think sums up the state of episode Revenant, and more so Destiny 2 as a whole at the moment.
And that we're building a train station, not a train. Which means that you need to stamp out crunch and any other form of heroics that you're doing that overextends your team. And to beware of over-delivery that can cause future problems for your station.
Coming off the back of the final shape, episodes were always going to have a tough task. Hell, even anything was going to have a rough ride after what is, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say it, a masterpiece of an expansion. Yes, all the haters, I can hear you typing furiously down in the comments already, but I think in all honesty, anything other than another expansion would have been the only thing that would have cut it. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and for many reasons. Most infamously, a huge portion of the workforce at Bungie was laid off amid mass layoffs in not just one, but 2 rounds of them in less than a year, both in the run up to and just after the launch of the final shape. That laid the foundation for episodes on what seems like jelly, and we all know that jelly doesn't make good foundations for anything other than a trifle, and once you get into a trifle, it all starts to get rather messy. Episode Echoes took the first spoon into the trifle, which was, let's face it, not very good, waddling the foundations of Destiny 2 to the core as we enter episode Revenant. Yes, jelly is the English term for jello or gelatine or whatever you Yanks call it, not that weird stuff that you put on your peanut butter sandwiches. That's jam. Speaking of jam, let's wrap up this intro and get on with my review of episode Revenant. The newest big bad this time is Vickrell, who is back, and in returning, he has crashed the helm into the last city. This gave us a new social space within the last city itself, where a bunch of Fallen, Ido and a Spider have set up shop. It is cool looking, mainly because it's something new to look at over the grey monotone colours of the helm that we've been used to for the past few years. But this also caused bugs, and probably one of the more embarrassing ones at that. Remember this cutscene from the end of the final shape? Well, this intro by Vickrell and crashing the helm actually caused it to look like this. Apparently, this is due to it just being linked to the view which was just outside the helm, so instead of that glorious vista, it was just rafters and shit. Could you imagine getting to the end of the epic conclusion of the 10-year Light and Dark saga and being greeted by this? The bugs, man, just the bugs, but I digress and we'll come back to this later. In a refreshing take, Bungie actually listened. Yes, that's right, Bungie actually listened. This time mainly in a response to time gating, specifically the story beats within seasons and now episodes which have been drawn out somewhat unnecessarily. This time round, all of the story beats were released at the start of each act, which was great, but also kinda bad. The thing was, yes, getting all the story in one go made it easier to go along with and see it to its conclusion, but it also kinda ruined the pacing of the story. I mean, listen, within the first hour, many players who logged on immediately had completed the entire story for Act 1. I thought, no, that can't be right, they must have just missed something. So by the time I logged in a few hours later after work, doing house chores and family stuff, I thought, okay, let's see how actual long this is going to take. I took my time, messed around, and then I was done. I looked at the clock and it took about 1 hour and 30 minutes. On the whole, you might look at that and think 1 hour 30 minutes worth of story content is actually good, but let's break it down. The first few minutes were the opening cinematic sequence, then a few bits of dialogue with the NPCs for the season, and then jumping into a mission lasting about 10 minutes, then into Onslaught Salvation, then it was back to the social hub, speak to the NPCs some more, mess around with the new tonic system, the less said about tonics the better, before one final mission and done. As you can see, a lot of this included travel time, menu busy work, and literally walking between the NPC locations. The story was barren, no pun intended. I actually praise Bungie for making this change though, and I think it's a positive one going forwards if they stick to it, playing the game at your own pace, doing what you want, but the story and NPC to-ing and fro-ing, and how the story is generally told needs a bit of a refresh at this point. We've had years of the Helm Tower back and forth shit. Frontiers aims to fix this, but for the here and now, it still feels bad. Personally, I generally prefer getting the story beats through characters, talking as I play through a mission via Ghost or whoever are the characters of the moment. Or better yet, in a cutscene, which, let's be honest, Destiny 2 have recently had some banging cutscenes up there with the best of them, from the ink splash style to the stop animation used within Revenant itself. All great, all top tier, more, yes please Bungie. However, when it comes to reading walls of text at the social space, listening to a hologram, or even just an NPC in the helm, I kinda check out anyway, and if I miss anything serious story wise, then I guess that's on me. But what I am glad with is that I didn't have to log in each week to run the same repeat missions, going back and forth from Idor, then speak to Idor at the holo projector, then speak to Idor via a letter in the social space. It was all done in one go, which, like I say, felt janky due to the obvious cutting out of busy work within the seasonal activities, which I don't miss, mind you. Bungie said this was all going away, but it's still as strong as ever, and if we ever needed an indication that the seasonal model has run its course, this method of storytelling is clearly it. As for the story, let's sum it up like this. Fickrel, who was the fallen big bag from Forsaken, is back, this time to raise dead fallen into Revenant scorn for his own bidding after finding the power of the Echo, which spit out from the Traveller on beating the Witness. Mithrax gets us to do his dirty work as he is feeling under the weather, and so the Guardian has to stop Fickrel's plans. Eramis gets involved again, it all gets rather messy, culminating in a battle in Fickrel's fortress, where he's defeated, Mithrax tries to play down the winner, Eramis chucks a few human slurs before deciding to leave the Sol system with her new Echo after it chooses her, and that's it. The story is fine, it's fine. Was it a loose end that needed tying up? Probably not, but at least it gives us something to aim for in terms of leaving the current system, which is what Frontiers is apparently doing. As with any new season or episode, we get a bunch of new activities, and to be honest, Revenant didn't disappoint. There's Onslaught Salvation, which is the Revenant version of the mega popular one introduced with the Into the Light update. This is a wave based horde mode, which increases in difficulty as you progress, which is something Destiny players had been shouting out for years. It is, however, a bit strange that this episode got its very own Onslaught playlist, given how new, recent and popular the normal version of it still is. What's even more strange though, is how it doesn't really add anything. Sure, there's a few new defences to purchase as you progress through, with stasis tripwires, turrets and even a orbital strike. But the loot pool is just the seasonal weapons, there's no unique rewards like emblems or shaders, and the main thing is there's no ornaments, which were the literal shit with the OG version. I grinded for hours and hours to get my perfect gold shiny midnight coup with my perfect roll, yet I can say I probably haven't even played an hour of Onslaught Salvation given the little incentive to do so. Want to hear some good news though? Prison of Elders is back. The fabled game mode from Destiny 1 returned with a huge fanfare, and this rendition is called the Tomb of Elders. This wave based arena mode bids you against various bosses and mechanics in certain rooms which you have to defeat, usually within a time limit to progress and unlock better and more rewards, with a secret golden treasure room unlocking if you successfully beat it. Tomb of Elders is great, but it could have been so much more. We all go on about reskins, but like Prison of Elders was an epic long lasting game mode in Destiny 1. It even got updates, most notably the April update after the Taken King, bringing new armour with Chroma and Taken theme sets, updated loot pools and everything on top of that. This version of Prison of Elders is actually even good. It's got all the right vibes, tough encounters, mechanics relevant to Destiny 2, it's even got an ongoing difficulty mechanic where if you do good or bad, you get Warden's Favour or Warden's Punishment respectively, which positively or negatively affect your rewards at the end of any run. It's even got the hated revive token mechanic, which I think actually fits rather well in this mode, making you think about your actions and your teammates, which let's all face it, we hate them anyway. It's modes like this that Destiny 2 and Bungie need to pivot to going forwards. Where are the exclusive Tomb of Elders weapons, not just the seasonal ones? Where are the unique exotics, Dreg's Promise and Co, secret emblems, exotic ships, sparrows, shaders? It's got endless possibilities. Just stuff like this needs more of a chance to thrive, which again unfortunately leans back to the start of this review and the apparent reluctance to over-deliver in any meaningful way. It does lean heavily into the coil from Season of the Wish, which was also extremely well received. It shows that Bungie still have it, yet just like the coil, Tomb of Elders seems destined for the bin when the inevitable yearly expansion refresh happens, never to see the light of day again or get updates once the New Frontiers expansion drops in the summer, which is just a real shame. Act 3 brought the new exotic mission, and when I say exotic mission I mean it loosely. Yes, it's a mission, yes at the end of it you get an exotic, but that's where its comparisons disappear when compared to exotic missions like the Whisper or 0 Hour, which were actual slogs, timed, required feats of bravery and a mastery of its puzzles to complete. This is just more like accessible long missions, like a cherry on top of a cake at the end of the episode, except at this point this cake has gone stale and the cherry has lost all of its juice. That being said, Slayer's Fang is pretty sweet. It's the reward from it and is an exotic shotgun. It's got all that secret sauce that we love with exotics and it's fun to use. It hits like a truck, can deal with them pesky overload champions and actually has some synergy with the seasonal artifact. Yes, seasonal artifacts are still a thing. Long story short, seasonal artifact very icy and make Void go big boom. Back to Kel's Fall, and once again the dev team and environment artists have absolutely cooked. There's this mirror realm which is just like nothing we've ever seen before in Destiny 2. It's grounded in the Tangled Shore and Dreaming City environments we've come to know and love, but this shake up to it is next level. Even the text is backwards, which just adds to the whole vibe, and if PvP did get any meaningful updates more than every 200 years, I think we'd be asking for a new map themed on this thanks to just how good it is. And I think that brings us nicely onto the loot. We've spoken briefly about it already. This time around Bungie went with a vampire themed aesthetic, adding a bunch of weapons that look like this. Yeah, nah, this is not really my taste to be honest. To me they just look like somebody has stuck foil on them and called it a day. I've never been a fan of stuff that look like this in Destiny ever. I can't put my finger on it as to why, it's just not my style. Also, they were rather meh, with roles that aren't standouts compared to what long-time players probably already have. There is this one new perk though called Jolting Feedback, which applies jolt and electrifies enemies over time on dealing sustained damage to them. But on the stuff we've seen on this episode, it hasn't landed too well yet. Slap it on a heavy machine gun or linear fusion rifle and then we're talking. This episode also got rid of crafting for the first time in a long time in an effort to bring back the grind, but as all new weapons you obtain can have the final 2 perks on them enhanced to boost their effectiveness for a nominal fee of materials, I didn't think that this was too bad. There was a new tonic system introduced to help focus your drops, but like most things it was bugged until Act 3 came out, and by that point people cared even less about tonics than they did at the start, which wasn't very much to begin with. Reddit however quite simply lost its mind about the lack of weapon crafting. This isn't shocking to literally anyone, but the backlash to this might mean we'll see crafting of seasonal weapons back sooner than we think. Garden of Salvation raid weapons did however get the crafting overhaul, and these Shadowkeep era raid weapons are now arguably some of the best. If you can get used to doing some of the out of bounds jumping to get to the secret chests, you don't even have to communicate with actual people, which is a bonus. Alephanim, that was a thing. To be honest, Season Pass exotics have usually been decent. Red Death Reformed, Dragon's Breath, even all the way back to Cryosphesia, all excellent, but this one was a massive pass. The less said about this one the better. However, the new exotic armour this season was pretty cracked. All of them were stasis themed, and to be honest I've only really messed with the Warlock Rhymecoat one, but it upped the viability of the Shadebinders builds and I'm here for it. I honestly can't talk about this episode without talking about the new dungeon, Vesper's Host. Dungeons have swiftly become one of Destiny 2's most popular pieces of content, placing smaller 3-person fire teams into a level with multiple bosses, mechanics and secrets to overcome. Bungie even recognised how popular these have become with the player base by adding a world's first race on its release, something which is only usually saved for the newest raid. Fortunately, Vesper's Host didn't disappoint, and to be honest this is where I spent the most of my time this episode. From collecting all the new spacewalk themed armour, including a puzzle to unlock the class items to transmog onto all of my characters, collecting the new weapons, to even just taking in the environment, Vesper's host absolutely bangs. There's even some deep lore and story implications within it, which if you take the time to seek out will likely give you some indication onto what's ahead for the future of Destiny 2. The encounters all felt fresh, with new takes on DPS phases throughout. There's a servitor boss which splits into a ton of tiny servitors, making the go-to DPS methods obsolete and had players scrambling to their vaults to use something more appropriate. The final boss room is brutal and I still haven't got the hang of it. You can get the usual solo flawless emblems for those mad enough to try. I won't be getting that one anytime soon. The loot though, oh boy the loot. This is where the fun begins. All of it is S tier. Velocity Baton has swiftly become an ad clearing favourite, especially with its borderline broken ability to generate orbs of power which can give you all manner of in-game boosts. But it's the chill inhibitor which really shook up the sandbox in more ways than one. Waitgate was a massive controversy during episode Revenant that erupted out of the seemingly innocuous loot pool from the Vesper's host dungeon. The stasis grenade launcher has a god roll that is arguably the best in the game for DPS, allowing players to defeat bosses milliseconds quicker than other weapons would allow it. The problem? This roll was virtually impossible to obtain. You literally had a better chance of winning the lottery than getting these two perks to drop on it. Yes, we all know that RNG is a bitch, but it was actually proven to be true by people with brains much larger than mine. Thanks to simulations and community data, Bungie even succumbed to the pressure to conduct their own testing and found this to be actually true, and a deep lying bug in the game in how perks and perk combos could drop together. But wait, here's the best bit. This bug has been in the game for years, likely since random rolls were introduced in Forsaken in 2018. So yeah, all them times that you toiled to get that perfect roll was basically a mathematical impossibility over the years. Granted, this also likely worked in favour of the player for many rolls on weapons, making them easier to obtain, but for this one, the perfect firestorm of perks being too far away from each other in the database and it being the desirable weapon for spreadsheet warriors made it take front and centre this episode. Fortunately, it's been fixed, although I'm not too sure it's fully sorted, as RNG is still a bitch. Bugs though, and the whole state of Destiny 2 has been in flux for some time, but it hasn't been more obvious than during episode Revenant. We've already mentioned bugs linked to the final shape, Waitgate, tonics not dropping weapons as intended, then there's the whole subclass tree that's been locked out of dungeon, exotic pieces of armour doing game breaking amounts of damage on bosses leading to them being disabled. The whole fabric of Destiny 2 spaghetti code is a mess. Guitar errors, kicked from activities, screens glitching out, hell, even Aramis still in her cell despite having launched a slew of human slurs as she left the Sol system with the Echo. At this point we all know that the quality assurance team layoffs at Bungie have had a massive effect, but none of this helps, and when regular Joe gets home from the office and wants to sit down and play his favourite game Destiny 2 using his favourite build he's meticulously crafted over a period of weeks or months, just for it to be disabled due to no fault of his own doesn't feel good. I'm sure that this is going to change going forwards, whether on Bungie's own back or with their hands being forced by their Sony overlords. However, this might get worse before it starts to get better, only time will tell.
Zone B captured. Zone advantage is yours.
This leads us on to the core game. PvP is still a mess. Despite maps, newish loot recently, just nobody plays, which makes it rather sad. I used to love raiding or getting a new world drop or exotic in the game and then taking it into PvP to show it off, but it just doesn't work like that anymore. The countless mods probably don't help on any given day here too. Then there's Trials, with its population basically non-existent. Even avid trial streamers are playing the game mode less and less. Iron Banner was here, this time with new armour, and it even got a new stasis rocket assisted frame sidearm, which is rather neat. These sidearms are all the rage in PvE content, and this one looks set to stick around in players' loadouts for some time, which is nice for a change as Iron Banana stuff is usually lackluster at best. Moving on, strikes are strikes, nightfalls and especially grandmasters are essentially a walkover given how insanely power crept everyone's builds are. Consecrate your titan all over the place and win is the order of the day. Gambit? Gambit's still there. Actually, it has bygones, so if you want your favourite pulse from Forsaken, then go and get it. It's actually got some great perks this time round, and it feels just as good as it did before. Due to the revamped episodic model, we didn't just have one but two seasonal events this time around, with both Festival of the Cost and the Dawning showing up. Not much has changed with these events, and most veteran players get involved with these as they are par for the course at this point. Aside from the new armour ornaments on offer and a few new weapons, there wasn't much going on. Festival of the Lost did however allow players to pick up the exotic class items if you owned the final shape, which was rather nice given how much of a grind you need to do in the Pale Heart to get one. The Dawning launched in a buggy mess, so much so that some players who logged in early enough managed to bag the paid event pack for free. These usually cost real money, and yes, Bungie eventually shut this down in true Bungie fashion. However, they did succumb to pressure from the community and even the community team from reading between the lines and allowed those who got it for free to keep it. This was a nice touch, but kinda sucked for those who weren't able to log in straight after reset. Again, it's another moment where this could have been an easy dub for Bungie, saying like, hey guys, we know it's Christmas, bank error in your favour, here's a free event track for everyone. This wouldn't exactly save the game, but the goodwill from it could have been a huge bonus for the game at this point, instead of a small payoff to the few who noticed early enough. Episode Revenant is in the bag. Truly a huge amount of content was introduced compared to previous offerings. Tons of new weapons, game modes, places to go, things to see, but like I said at the beginning, Bungie is so used to not over delivering that just tons of this stuff just misses the mark. It's all good to play, but none of it feels overly meaningful. The Raid and Dungeon team popped off with Vesper's host. Tomb of Elders is right on the cusp of being great in my opinion, but it just lacks that oomph, that want, that need, that desire to play it. At this point it feels like Bungie just want to get through these episodes, forget they exist and crack on with Frontiers, but that plan needed time in the oven, and with staff deficits, who knows if we'll ever see the true Bungie ever again. My final take from Revenant is that it's just more Destiny, which is great for those who like Destiny, but there's nothing game changing, it's got no hooks, and given the player numbers, more Destiny just isn't what people want right now.